Hello everyone and welcome to Larkin Design. I'm Theresa Moxley and today I'm working on a traditional mixed media layout. This is part of my Things I Need to Hear series, and today's layout is called Hello Gorgeous. I'm working with a photo that I took last week when I did the face-to-face video for my survey introduction. Whenever I do face-to-face videos, I always take a couple of still photos, just impromptu, kind of just to make sure that all my tags are tucked in and everything. And so I'm enjoying having these little selfies to work with here on an album project that kind of came about accidentally, but that I'm actually using as sort of an affirmation project for myself and a self-acceptance project. And today I'm also working with the Heidi Swapp Magnolia Jane collection. So I've gone through the ephemera. I have the ephemera, the gold word art, and the sticker pack. And then these are the patterned papers. And you also saw a stencil that I picked up from Prima. So I'm obsessed with floral stencils right now, and so I'll go ahead and just give you a heads up that you'll be seeing a lot of floral stencils from me in the next few weeks, and so just because I love them. So I've decided that I want to work with one of these pink papers. I sort of have in mind and sort of don't have in mind what I want to do. This became the paper that I decided on, and what I want to do is paint a white gesso rectangle in the middle of the layout. Typically you see this done with a white cardstock, just a white rectangular cardstock in the center, and then the border of the layout or the border of the pattern paper left. But I wanted to do that with gesso. So I put down a heavy coat of gesso. I didn't want much of the pattern paper to show through. I really wanted a place that was ready to accept the watercolors and the stencil. So it's pretty heavy on there. You don't see much of the pattern paper underneath. And then I dried it really well with my heat tool for a really long time. I've cropped all the heat setting out of this video today, just because there was a lot of heat setting. And so anyway, y'all kind of know how a heat gun works. Now here's where I'm going to add my floral stencil, and I'm using modeling paste. And so I want the floral to be mostly over the gesso, but it's overlapping a little tiny bit onto the pattern paper. And this would have been really pretty on the pattern paper as well. I did want a little bit I wanted a little of the floral to seep over the edge onto the pattern, but I also wanted the majority of the floral to be on the gesso so that my watercolor paints would be able to move about that stencil. So I have a couple of acrylics here that I'm going to use, and a couple of distress paints from Tim Holtz that I'm going to use, and I have 4 little clamshells. I prepare my Tim Holtz and my acrylics. I just add a tiny bit of water to them before I begin trying to move them around the page. You don't have to do this because I'm going to spray too, but I find for me it does make it a little bit easier to move around the page, and it creates a lighter look when the paint is dry on the page. And so my process for this, you guys have seen me do this a lot. I love this part. It's one of the therapeutic parts of this process that I love the most, and it's just the act of putting paint to the paper and then letting it run where it wants to run. At this stage in my process, I'm not at all invested in how it has to look. I don't have any set ideas on, okay, the leaves have to be green and the flowers have to be pink. No, this is simply to let the paint go where it wants to go and let it become organic, in the sense that the paints decide where they want to be. And if that means that some of the flowers are green, then some of the flowers are green. And it's really more about adding the color to the page, more so than coloring flowers. This is coloring outside the lines at its best, right? So if you were the kindergartner that couldn't stay in the lines, this is the technique for you, right? Put the paint down on the paper and then let it run. Now, I am linking these two separate areas, right? They're two separate stenciled areas. I am joining them together by letting those trails of color run into each other. That is somewhat intentional, and that's okay. In the end, I don't know that really showed up quite the way I had planned for it. But again, this isn't about having a set idea in mind. It's simply about letting the process do what the process wants to do and letting go of expectations. And life is like that, isn't it? Life is like that, where we think we have plans. And absolutely, I think that we should have plans and we should have goals. And then life sometimes says, nope, that's not what's going to happen. And being able to express that in this process helps with accepting the things in life that weren't as planned or weren't as we envisioned. So that's your takeaway for today. I always like to include some little things that I'm learning in this process. I'm always learning in the artistic process. I'm always learning about myself. And I'm always learning about where I could do better and where I'm needing to come to grips with some things. I have a lot of things I need to come to grips with. But this process lets me see, actually, that the unexpected is okay too. And the unplanned can be okay too. And sometimes the bad can be okay too. So I've put down all the color on my page. I used a little tiny bit of pink, a little tiny bit of yellow, a little tiny bit of green. And then I'm going to do just a couple of black splashes here. In interior design, there's a saying that goes something like, a room isn't complete unless there's a little tiny bit of black. And this layout sort of felt like that. That the painting and the colors weren't quite finished yet until there was a little tiny splash of black across the page. So that's all done, and then I'm just adhering it to a plain cardstock on the back. This is to help give stability back to this paper. Has now been broken down, right? It's now been broken down by the water in the gesso and the heat set, and then the water in the watercolors. So just to add a little bit of stability, I always put a sheet of cardstock on the back. And then I'm visualizing that here's where my photo is going to end up. And that means that I'm ready to start embellishing. And I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with the title in the end. I did lay out all of the word art, just to see what words spoke to me or whatever, and what I ended up deciding to go with was Hello Gorgeous. All of these words are so pretty, right? And if you ever think that your handwriting isn't beautiful, like, look at how handwriting these words are. Heidi Swapp's handwriting is beautiful, and it's not perfectly calligraphed, right? It's just how she writes, and it's beautiful. So I'm going to use the Hello Gorgeous words, and I grabbed some little tiny pop dots. Now, I'm pretty used to using transparent elements. I love using little transparent titles, transparencies, transparent journaling cards. I love see-through elements. So I like the idea that for this title that you can see some things underneath. And before I start to put that title down, I'm going to figure out the rest of my ephemera and the other things that I'm going to put around this photo. And so I kind of had some of the ephemera in mind already. I knew I wanted to use this big giant camera. For me, the Magnolia Jane collection speaks very neutral. Even though there are colors in the collection, it's a very neutral collection. And my photo is very neutral. It's a color photo, but it's a very neutral photo, very monochromatic. Just my skin tone, a little tiny bit of lipstick. I'm not wearing lipstick. I'm wearing like lip gloss and a black shirt, right? Very neutral photo, and just the tiny pops of color around the border, and then very neutral embellishments as well. I grabbed a couple of the tags, and so I'm going to center but the floral stencils are kind of the jumping off point for where I want to center my embellishments. So they kind of become like a lily pad for the embellishments. I also kind of feel like the photo is fading into the background here. I'm not sure why it felt that way to me, but I really did like, I love this whole collection, but I really did like some of the pattern papers and how they felt with what I have here on my desk. So I'm going to cut up some of the other patterns, and this is something you guys have heard me talk about before, that I struggle with cutting my pattern papers. So I tend to just cut them all at once, all together. Boom, done. I think that then you have some decisions made. Well, how big do I need to make it, right? And it just 2 or 3 inches wide. Just 2 or 3 inch wide strips by 5 or 7 inches. Some of them 6 inches. Just don't even really think about it. Here at this stage, I'm not even really thinking about it, except for this sheet. I really like this little gray lattice, right? It's a diagonal grid, and I'm going to put that across the page behind my photo. So that's going to be like the main photo mat. I'm not a big fan of matting photos. I don't do that very often. you guys have probably never seen me mat a photo before. But this is a chance for a slightly larger piece of pattern paper. And I'm keeping it neutral here, but it does help the photo stand out from the background. It also covers up the lines that connect the floral elements, but it's okay, right? Your eye replaces what's missing underneath there, so no worries. And then once I have that gray pattern paper down, then I can figure out how I want to layer the other strips around the photo as well. And again, I sort of have in mind where my ephemera is going to go, and so I want those strips to repeat. These are just more layers. And this is sort of a simplified way of doing layers, actually. And just tucking little tiny bits of pattern paper here and there around the photo. And again, they're lily pads. They're like little homes for embellishments. A little foundation, if you will. And this is typically how I do my layers. My layers are strips of paper tucked underneath the photo, and then little embellishments, little puffy stickers, little tags, little stamp sentiments. And then I want to put back the ephemera. Now that I have the layers themselves adhered down, I want to put back the ephemera and make sure that they still have their homes that they need. I'm going to date this layout. I'm using just an old date stamp that came from the Target dollar spot, and I'm stamping the date on one of the tags from the ephemera pack. And so 2 of the tags are going at the top, and then another 2 will go at the bottom. And I thought because they're punch tags, right? And I thought about taking some brads to punch through those holes, but then I didn't want to do that. So you'll see how I handle that at the end of the video. So here's where I took the glue dots and adhered down the title. So I took tiny ones and I cut them in half so that they would be hidden behind the gold of the letters, and that way they stand up just a tiny bit above the pattern papers and above the photos. I wasn't really sure how that would look, but I kind of like it. It does, in the end, it does add a bit more dimension here, and it lets that gold stand up above the patterned papers. I felt like if it laid flat, it would have lost something. And I'm not really sure I can express what I felt like it was going to lose, but I like having it popped up just a little tiny bit. So just cut your pop dots in half and hide them behind the gold parts. There. And that's my title. And somewhere along the way, one of the pop dots stuck to the photo. So that was my little picker-upper to get the sticky adhesive off. I've got a little space over here with that hot air balloon that I feel like still needs to be filled, but I haven't figured out yet how I'm going to fill that. And then of course my adhesive ran out. I'm happy to report that I had backups, so no scrapbooking had to be halted. And then here's where I put the other tags down at the bottom of the photo. So now I'm just gonna go through the ephemera like one more time. There's a bunch of pieces in this ephemera pack. There's a lot of really pretty transparent elements and a lot of really pretty craft elements. Lots of choices. I did really like this arrow. And I am going to staple that down. I did not staple the title, but I did staple down the little arrow. And then I have this stamp set from Pink Paisley. It's from Paige Evans' last collection, Oh My Heart, I think. And I'm going to use it for the lines and for the hearts. There's a little set of 3 hearts. They're meant for lists or for bullet journaling. But I am going to stamp the lines here on the side for my journaling. And at this stage, I'm not really sure how many lines I need exactly. So I'm going to just put down a couple and then fill out a little of my journaling. Oh, but I'm going to stamp some of the hearts first. And I decided to switch to this pigment white to stamp onto the gray. So there's a little bit of contrast here in the stamped images. The black lines and then the white hearts on the gray pattern paper. I like that. Now I'm going to write my journaling. And I'm just writing again. I'm writing a reminder to myself that it's okay to embrace what I look like. It's okay to embrace myself. When I look at that photo, if it was anybody else, I would be like, oh, that's a pretty photo. And when I look at it and I know it's myself, I'm my own worst critic and I see every one of my flaws. And so I wanted to just write myself a reminder that it's okay to accept myself and to love what I look like. And probably all of us need that reminder. In the end, I didn't have enough lines, so I stamped another set and then was able to finish my journaling. There. Now I do want to stamp just a few more little things around the page. And this is how I like to use my stamp sets, and I like to use these little roller stamps. If you sometimes don't know what to do with your roller stamps that have the little phrases on them, I love using them like this. And just around the page. Now, they're not in the middle of the white. They're close to another element. All the stamped images are close to either a pattern paper or the journaling or the stencils. They're all in close proximity to another element so that they don't look like they're floating. They look like they're part of the embellishments and the papers and the photos. If you just put the stamped images in the middle of the white space, they would look like you sneezed, right? They would look disconnected from the rest of the elements. At this stage, I decided that there was just something missing still. And this is a throwback to some classic Heidi Swapp. Way back when she had these really big, giant jumbo flowers, and they came in red and pink, I think black and white, and they were really pretty, and they looked like these flowers. These are not Heidi Swapp flowers. They're Recollections brand that you can get at Michael's, but this is repeating a classic Heidi Swapp element. We all bought and used those big giant florals for quite a few years, and it was so sad when they took them off the market, and she shifted directions, and their time was over. But I brought them back here for this layout, and in the end, like, they add another element of dimension and just one more beautiful thing to look at. I also put a little tiny freckled fawn black and white floral epoxy piece on the corner of that camera. That camera was so big in the corner, and I wanted to break it up just a little bit. So there's a craft piece and the little floral embellishment. And then I had talked about the tags, and I had thought about using brads, but I didn't want to poke through the holes. So I'm bringing back enamel dots too. I haven't used enamel dots in months, but of course you can see like how many I have. These are Theresa enamel dots, but they were black and white, and there were a couple of arrows to echo the arrow, and then I just put a couple others just around the page just to add a little bit more dimension to those black splashes of color. And then with that, I'm going to wrap up the layout and finish it for you. I'll share with you some details at the end. Also, be sure to check out my blog, and thanks so much for watching. I hope you will like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you back here again soon. Thanks again, you guys. Bye-bye.